Welcome everyone as you now enter the College of Law webinar. Our webinar today is on the topic Job Search Success Beyond Good Grades, which will address the question, how important do your academic results play in the recruitment process, a question that I get asked all the time. My name is Susan Pincus and I am the National Careers Professional at the College of Law, and I'm excited to have you tune in online today with me. Each month we deliver a 1-hour live webinar on various topics designed to help our graduates kickstart their careers as they transition into the legal profession. Before we start, I would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands on which we are sitting at this time and pay my respect to elders past, present and emerging. I am joined today by 3 wonderful panellists, and maybe if you can just put your hand up, although your names are on the screen, but anyway, Amy Burton, Managing Lawyer from Everyday Justice, Danielle Emerson, Senior Legal Transformation Manager from Herbert Smith Freehills, and Mel Smith, Legal Counsel Litigation, Lake Macquarie City Council. Before I pass over to our panel, a few housekeeping matters. We've allocated 15 minutes of questions at the end of the session. So if you can just enter your questions via the Q&A, that would be fantastic. And even if you want to just enter them in during the session so you don't forget later on when we come to them. We are recording this webinar as well, and you will be sent the link via your email address. So what I'm going to do now is to pass you over to our panelists who are the experts and will be able to answer this question. And I would just like to start off with you, Amy, and then maybe Mel and then Danielle, just to give the audience a little bit of an overview of your career backgrounds to date, and then what you do in a typical week, just so that we know a little bit more about you. So perhaps, Amy, if you want to kick off.
Sure. I've been a bit all over the place in my career. I've been admitted as a lawyer since 2011. During law school, I spent a lot of time volunteering at community legal centres because that was something that really appealed to me. But I did go down the path initially of working at Allens as a commercial lawyer. I did some insolvency law, some technology and media law. I was there for about 3 years. Then I shifted completely over to working in criminal law policy at the Attorney General's Department in Canberra. And then it was at that point that I finally realised how much I was missing community lawyering and all those experiences I had volunteering back at law school, and finally decided it was time to look for a job at a community legal centre or similar. So I took a leap of faith and applied for a job at Salvos Legal Humanitarian, which was a completely not-for-profit law firm. Surprised myself and got the job, moved to Sydney and worked as a pro bono lawyer, mainly in migration, family and crime for about 5 years. Went overseas on a scholarship to research more about how we could make pro bono legal services more effective, perhaps incorporate low bono for a year, and then came back and worked with one of my old colleagues to set up Everyday Justice at Mills Oakley. So we're a community legal service that lives within Mills Oakley, which is a national law firm, and we provide a national free legal service to people in most practice areas.
Okay, fantastic. Thanks for that, Amy. Mel.
Yes, well, I started off working as a paralegal and studying my law degree part-time over many years. Probably worked as a paralegal for maybe 10 years or more in a variety of different firms, very large national firms, all the way down to sole practitioners and smallish firms in regional areas. During that time, someone suggested to me that I would probably enjoy working in-house. So when the opportunity came up at Lake Macquarie almost 10 years ago to join their legal team, I I took that opportunity and I've been here ever since. Lake Macquarie Council is a very vibrant and interesting place to work. Pretty much the legal team deals with anything that you would expect a council to deal with, whether that be barking dogs all the way through to planning and development, large infrastructure projects, governance and political issues, everything that you would see at a local council at some point will probably make its way to the legal team. So it's a very interesting place to work, lots going on, lots of variety. And as I said, I've been here for about 10 years now, so almost become a part of the furniture, but it's been a really great place to work. So I'm a big advocate for in-house and government legal. If people are interested in pursuing that path, I think it's a great alternative to private firms.
Okay, that's great. Thanks, Mel. And Danielle.
Hi everyone. So I'll be coming at this from a completely different angle because I am not a lawyer and have never practiced. But if you do have an interest in new law, then I guess I'll have some things to say that are relevant to you. And I guess it is, another alternative avenue that Mel mentioned. If you don't necessarily want to use your law degree to practice. So yeah, my background, I used to be a management consultant. Actually got into law when I lived over in London, worked at Linklaters there, and then have been at Herbert Smith Freehills for 4.5 years across the legal operations team, innovation, and now a big focus on legal transformation. And so yeah, that looks quite varied. I don't know, do you want me to say what a typical week looks like?
Yeah, definitely.
Sure. Might help if you haven't thought about this area so much. So if I just take this week, for example, might spend Monday, spend some time meeting with a graduate in my team. We have a legal ops grad program, making sure that she feels supported and knows what she's working on for the rest of the week. Then this week we had our winter clerks kickoff. So we actually make sure we talk to them about innovation and they have the opportunity to participate in our innovation labs. Prepare a lot of reporting, have project meetings, had an ideation session with a bunch of lawyers about how we can streamline some of our transactions practices. And then might also have, a meeting with a tech company, talk about some of the technology we're using and perhaps prepare a business case about how we might use that going forward.
Okay, wow, very exciting. And you've all got such diverse backgrounds. So we've kind of got a practice areas in all areas, including new law as well. So we might just kick into questions now. I'd just like to start with you, Amy. And in your role as a managing lawyer, you recruit a number of volunteer PLT students and graduates. What do you look for?
Big question. I do indeed. We at Everyday Justice, we have an internship program, which is pretty expansive. My colleague and I, we're the only two lawyers in the team, and we're both based in Sydney, but we offer internships in every Mills Oakley office in Australia. So we've got Sydney, Melbourne, Brisbane, Canberra, and Perth, where we host interns. And so you can, and we've only been operating since January last year, but in that year, in the year and a half that we've been operating, we've had 75 PLT interns. So you can imagine it's been pretty busy recruiting interns. I would say the big thing that we do read more than anything is people's cover letters and what it might seem like something that's not a big deal, but it really stands out to us when someone has taken the time to look at our website, any other materials that we've put on our social media, or even to show that they actually know what they're applying for. And I know it gets frustrating applying for PLT internships, but it's really obvious when someone has just copied and pasted the same words to every single place they're applying to, and sometimes even it's obvious based on fonts that have not transferred across. And it's not the be all and end all, but it really shows a genuine interest if you've been able to explain why you want to work at that place in particular. So if someone writes to me and says that they're really passionate about criminal law and family law, then I wonder whether they've looked at our website, because we very clearly don't do either. And obviously we do look at CVs. We're interested in what people have been doing, but what we want to do is train people who want to get into social justice law and want the practical experience in lots of different practice areas. So we're not going to judge you if you haven't worked at a law firm before. I don't even look at people's transcripts. Half the people include them in their applications, and I might occasionally open the file and skim it, but I don't pay any attention to it, to be honest, because that's not what we're looking for. We're looking for people who are genuinely interested in learning and being up for the challenge of trying things out, learning how to write letters to clients, learning how to give advice on a range of different practice areas. So I guess because we've read so many applications in the last 18 months, it does become obvious when someone does have that interest.
Okay, no, so academic results don't even come into it.
Not for me, no.
Okay,
no,
all right.
Because a lot of our interns have had so many other life experiences that are way more important than the marks they've got. You know, they might have been doing their law degree while juggling full-time work or parenting or something else, or they might be second career lawyers. And so we look at what other things people can bring that are probably more valuable than what marks they got during 3-hour pressured exam environments.
Yeah, okay. And just a question on that. So that's for Everyday Justice, but for Mills Oakley, for their graduate program, for example, would that be different?
Yeah, I believe that Mills Oakley do look at transcripts, but I think that they also have a similar approach in that they're looking for people who are genuinely interested in the work. So it'd come down to the practice area they're applying for and showing a genuine interest in that. And if someone has done any volunteering or any type of work that lends itself to that practice area. We've had 10 interns from Everyday Justice get jobs at Mills Oakley, and it's come down to us being able to advocate for them and say, yeah, they have since they've been with us, they've spoken a lot about planning and environment law and the fact that they want to get involved in that. We've tried to get them exposed to matters that have some sort of aspects of that, but this is why we think that what we've taught them during their internship will assist them in that role. So even if you're not applying for a job through that pathway and you're going in cold, and think about how, even if you haven't got the practice area experience, how what you've done can help in any way.
And so that's through like that on-the-job experience as well and performance.
Yeah, but even if it's not a legal job, like we've had people apply who are managers in retail jobs, but if they can show how that work will assist them, for example, to deal with difficult clients on the phone at Everyday Justice, then I'm all ears.
Yeah. Okay, that's great. Thanks for that. Mel, just moving on to you. When you recruit a junior lawyer, how important is a candidate's academic transcript? And also, like, I mean, a question around that maybe that lends itself is, if someone has got what they deem average results or even a couple of fails, do they need to even mention that on the cover letter, or what are your thoughts on that?
I think it really depends on where you're applying. At council, for instance, if transcripts are included in an application, we will look at them. If they're not included, we probably won't even ask about them. And what we're more interested in is cultural fit, and by that I mean, how well is this person going to fit in with our team, with the organisation more generally. Skills can be taught and knowledge can be gained, but that personality fit is usually a bit harder to develop if it's not there. So that's really what we're more interested in, is that how is this person going to integrate into our team? How are they going to be regarded by the wider organisation? If you do include your transcript, or you're asked for your transcript, and there are blemishes on it, whether that be fails or low passing grades, I would address it. If there is a reason for that, and there might well be a good reason why you've got those marks on your transcript, just explain why that is. And moving on from that, what have you learned from that? Being able to show recovery is pretty important as well. Like, so if you've had a fail in one subject and then gone on to do quite well in that subject at the next attempt, that's something I would highlight. If you're asked to show a transcript, just own up to it. Yep, this happened and I failed, but I was then able to come back and I got a pretty good mark the next time around. It's not a reflection of my ability. It was just the circumstances I was in, and I would just be quite open about that.
Okay, so you would even incorporate maybe 1 or 2 lines along that note? Yes,
I would. If I was asked to submit my transcript, I would probably include a covering letter addressing those sorts of issues, if there are any in your transcript.
Okay, if you don't have to include academic transcript, then you don't need to do that. Yeah.
Once you're admitted, really that's the thing that we would be primarily concerned with. If it's a role for an admitted lawyer, we want to know that you're admitted, and that doesn't necessarily require transcripts to be shown. There's other ways to verify that. So it really depends on the role and how interested in transcripts the particular organisation happens to be.
Okay, all right, now that's great. And Danielle, over to you. So you recruit graduates in the legal operations, the legal tech space.
Mm-hmm.
What's important for you?
Well, I guess it's a bit of a mix. Obviously, when we're looking at graduates, they're coming straight out of university generally. So, I mean, to be honest, in our space, it's generally like having a passion and an interest in the type of work we do. So I think as a firm, we do tend to collect transcripts across the board. But what our team would look at more is, like, particularly in more recent years, when universities have had subjects like law apps or technology in the law, like, have you already demonstrated an interest in this field? And to be honest, we don't even probably really then look at the grade. It's more just that you've had the interest in that space. Obviously, we know not all universities have that, so it's not like a prerequisite. It's not an absolute requirement. But I guess what I would say to anyone that's a student now, or even early in your career, there's so much that you can do to show that you are interested in legal innovation or legal operations. There's a lot of student-led groups out there, whether it's your specific university or things like the Legal Forecast. Attending summits, like I noticed there's a question that's come through already that mentioned the new Law Careers Summit. Even just saying you've gone to those things and shown interest, that to us that's a much better indicator, because we want people who are passionate about this space.
Yeah, so make sure you incorporate that into your cover letter, into your applications, and
definitely,
then obviously when you come to interview as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the
Okay.
people who stand out are the people who are proactive.
Yeah, and I mean, just like I was asking Amy as well, for other graduate programs, do you think that would be similar, or do you think that they might place more focus on it?
Look,
Yeah.
yeah, we probably would place more weight on it through our legal graduate program. I won't speak on behalf of our grad recruitment team, but yeah, I would imagine just because the volume of candidates is so much higher. Yeah, there's just one of the selection ways, I
Yeah.
guess, to try filter the numbers. But
Okay.
you know, I wouldn't say that means you can't have any blemishes or any gaps
Mm.
in your career, but it definitely would be looked at.
Yeah, but I think you're right. What you were saying, Mel, just use it as a way of perhaps explaining it and turning it into a bit of a kind of a learning growth mindset type experience as well. Back to you, Amy. You were talking about the power of a heartfelt cover letter that shows your human face. So can you give an example of what someone might put in their cover letter to describe an interest in everyday justice? What type of thing would sound impressive and what would kind of sound more corny, perhaps?
I think if people chuck in the standard buzzwords like, I'm innovative and hardworking without like giving any examples or anything. A lot of people in their CVs at the start have that section that describes them and their qualities, and I don't really look at that because I see it in everyone's, and I know that they're like the keyword things that people put in there. Ones that have stood out to me, because we are a legal service that's pitched at what we call the missing middle, so people who can't afford to pay much for a private lawyer, but often aren't eligible for free legal services. I've had quite a few people write about their own experiences growing up and being part of the missing middle, or even, maybe volunteering at legal centres and witnessing how those people have impacted them and why they're interested in pursuing that type of work. Even someone who just says, look, I went through law school and I found myself really interested in housing law and employment law and any of the ones that we've got on our list, and maybe a bit of an explanation about why they're interested. We've had people who've just said, look, I'm so fresh out of law school. I just want to be exposed to as many areas as possible, and I feel like this is going to be a great learning environment. At least they're being honest about it. And some of the funnier ones, I had a guy he was a stay-at-home dad for his two late primary school aged kids, and he said, well, because he's been able to juggle two rascal boys, he reckons he'd be able to deal with the trickiest calls we have, which stood out. Someone else put a pie chart of how they spend their days outside of law school or work, and there was baking sourdough bread during lockdown, and just things stood out just to make it a bit more unique.
Yeah, kind of like, as you say, it's really showing the human side of you.
Yeah. And it's so much about, we're going to be working with these people every day, interacting with them either face-to-face or on Microsoft Teams if they're in a different office. So it's about knowing that there's this human that we're going to want to be working with and going to want to train up. And it's going to be a good working experience for all of us.
Yeah, absolutely. Mel, just in terms of applications, if a person doesn't have any experience in local government, would that be something that would be a negative?
Well, we were always interested in experience. Obviously, that is a good thing to have, but local government is such a unique area of law that it's really not common for particularly more junior lawyers to have that experience. So it's certainly not a negative. if you've got exposure to any kind of corporate law or even property law, something like conveyancing even, that if you can sell it as something that is transferable to the work of local government, that's and it is highly transferable, that's just as good as bespoke local government experience, which very few people have. Until I certainly didn't have it before I came here. I had I was a solid generalist. I had a lot of experience in litigation and conveyancing and a wide range of practice areas that you would see in private law firms, but I had no government experience. So part of how I got my foot in the door was by selling the fact that I was able to transfer the skills that I had to local government and would be able to quickly acquire the new skills required.
Yeah, okay. So playing up the transferable and translatable skills, and also, showing that real willingness to learn.
That's right.
Yeah, okay, that's great. Danielle, you talked a lot more about the importance of showing the interest and the connection in what field you're involved in, and how that's really critical to support that with backup evidence. What makes an individual stand out for you? So anything like around particular degrees that someone might have done, or their background, there might be something unusual, like what other things kind of jump out at you?
Oh, honestly, it can be so broad. So, I mean, obviously in our space, if someone has done perhaps a degree in STEM before then doing a JD, something like that, obviously that's always something that then we know they've got a range of skills that you can draw on. But we've got some people who've just done straight law degree, but they've really demonstrated they've got a lot of interest in this space. Like I said, some have volunteered with different organisations. So there's a not-for-profit which was based out of Melbourne called Annika. We've got people who've volunteered with Annika. Like I said, attending seminars, getting involved, generally anything where you're a bit more proactive, even little things like if you're more interested in the tech space, learning the Microsoft Office 365 suite, particularly things like Power Apps and Power Automate. That's something you can do in your own time if you want, and then those skills are immediately transferable and useful in our tech team in particular. So yeah, basically anything that's demonstrated that you've got a real interest in this space, and it's across the whole plethora. It's not just tech. If you've got a real interest in design thinking, if it's more project management, you've started kind of trying to hone those skills. If you're already an existing lawyer, we've spoken to people and they if they were at other firms, for example, they might have tried to actually do some projects with their own innovation teams before then making the full jump full time. So like I said, I think it's just being proactive, and it really depends which area that you're most interested in.
Yeah, no, but I really love that. So that idea of even including some of the tools that you've maybe taught yourself, and any kind of seminars maybe that you've been listening to, and so really bringing that into your applications.
Yeah, it shows that you really thought about your potential career change or moving away from what you thought you might do out of a law degree. So it just proves you've thought about it a bit more and invested time in it.
Okay. Now that all makes perfect sense. Amy, just let's talk a little bit about the power of your network and keeping in touch. So how does that play out, do you think, as someone that is starting their career?
I think it's super important. I think that the contacts you make, even in volunteer roles, like the Everyday Justice internship program is a volunteer internship program, but I think it can be so valuable if you invest the effort into maintaining those connections and developing them while you're there. So our interns who have done the best and ended up getting jobs either within Mills Oakley, which isn't necessarily the aim of the internship, but it's a great outcome, or for people who've got roles outside of this firm, but perhaps have been recommended, we've recommended them to other places. They're the ones who, you know, came into the role, even little things like when they're in the office, they're making small talk with other lawyers at the firm, introducing themselves, seeing if there's a time to have coffee with them, but without doing it, you know, in a pushy way if it's a, you know, a really busy partner or something. That's a really good start. We're always really happy for people to check in when they're finished up with us or coming to the end of an internship, and you know, they might see a job advertised and want some tips on what they should put in their cover letters. If they tell us what sort of areas of law they're looking to get into, then we keep an eye out, and if we know anyone who works in those law firms, we do our best to put our feelers out, because we want the best for everyone. It's a really hard environment to get that first legal job. So if you make the effort to let your colleagues and supervisors know what you're trying to look for, then I would hope that they would be interested in helping. But then it's also you've got to balance it with the fact that your supervisors are probably really busy as well. So you probably don't want to be messaging them every week saying, can we meet up for coffee to talk about this and that? You go with them with maybe once a month or something after you've finished working there with I specifically want to talk about this. Do you have time? Do you have 15, 20 minutes? Let us know if we're a reference for you. Let us know when you're applying for jobs, because writing endless reference checks for people, it can be quite onerous. So we just like to know these things. But also the reality is that a lot of jobs, particularly for juniors, frustratingly, aren't advertised. So it might be that someone within Mills Oakley says, I'm super busy, I'm really looking for a junior. Are there any interns that you think might be suitable? And those interns who really make the effort and make a good impression with us, then we will very happily put them forward. But they're not the roles that come up on job ads, and a lot of my interns who've got jobs elsewhere, it's also been a similar thing where it's who they've known. And not everyone comes from a law background. My parents didn't even finish high school, so it's not it's something you have to work hard to develop. It's not going to come easy, but it's really worth putting that effort in if it means that you're exposed to more job opportunities than you might be if you're just looking on Seek.
Yeah, so it's kind of getting that balance right, though, isn't it? So I mean, it's putting in the hard work and asking questions and showing a real interest in your work, but at the same time, communicating with people and getting to know them as well. Yeah. That's amazing. So that's really an important message to everyone that's listening about the power of referral and the power of the hidden market as well. So by being
and it might start with something like a paralegal role. Not necessarily what you want exactly to start with, but if that's going to be your foot in the door to make a good impression, then it's worth giving it a go.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, thanks, Amy. So, Mel, what about what advice would you have for someone that's maybe struggling to secure a paralegal role or a graduate lawyer position?
Okay, well, I guess the first thing that I would say is try not to be too fixated on the job title or the practice area necessarily, even if it's your your wish to be a graduate lawyer working in a particular area of law, you need to get that foot in the door somewhere, and it might mean doing whatever you need to do to get there. So that might mean accepting a paralegal role in another area or at another firm or in a regional area or a legal secretary role, anything that is within a law firm. If you work hard and show that you're interested and enthusiastic and diligent, most firms are very happy to progress people who show all of those things once they've got the foot in the door. So try not to be too fixated on what the job title might be. I spent a lot of time working as a legal secretary and a paralegal before I became a lawyer. I've done everything from answer the phones on the front desk to the mail run to all the way through to now representing counsel in court. So, and I consider all of that experience makes me a better lawyer, makes me a much more well-rounded professional. The fact that I have sat on reception and answered the phone, those skills are highly transferable to the work of a lawyer. You still need to know how to negotiate, how to present yourself. So don't be too concerned about whatever the job title might be. Just get your foot in the door and show that you're keen and enthusiastic, and I'm sure that the firm will want to keep you then, and they will do what's required to keep you in the firm. And if they don't, then that experience will definitely help you secure the next role. Once my personal experience has been, particularly in those paralegal type of roles, once you've got experience in a law firm, you're highly employable. Other firms will really value that experience. So just get a foot in the door and don't be too concerned with the job title.
Yeah, that's really great.
The other thing I would also suggest is when you're applying for these roles, particularly for government roles, address the selection criteria. So you'll see in the ad, they'll have very specific criteria. What I do is I actually do a separate document in addition to my cover letter and CV that addresses those criteria. And particularly in government roles, that tends to be, that's sort of what they're looking for. They will have to tick off those criteria when they're making their final choice. So help them along by giving them something that directly addresses them with examples, not just, yes, I can do this, but an example of when you've done that. And that's a really good way to get yourself to the interview stage by showing them a bit more of what you can do than might be obvious from your CV and your cover letter.
So just to clarify that, is that like as part of the key selection criteria? Yes. Is that a separate document? Yep.
Yeah, so sometimes one thing is sometimes you don't get an opportunity to upload anything other than a cover letter and a CV. Just attach it to the back of your cover letter. So then you've got, yes, your cover letter, but you've also directly addressed each of the criteria and shown what it is that you can offer. And that could well be a very effective way to get your foot into an interview if your experience, if it's not necessarily obvious from the CV and whatever short message you might put in your covering letter, how it is that you can meet the selection criteria.
Okay, no, that sounds really good. As you say, make it easier for the reader.
Yes, and for the recruiter, we've got a process that we have to go through, and we have to be able to demonstrate that we have addressed the selection criteria when we're making the choice to recruit someone.
Just a question that came. So they've completed their PLT, they've been admitted. What do you think about them being open to taking any position? Do you think that is good for their brand? Yeah, I don't know. I don't. Did you hear that question? I think I
lost
cut
the
out.
start of.
to practice, and that they might be finding it hard to get a graduate lawyer. Of people start off in those paralegal support roles, do you think that does any damage to their brand?
Okay, I missed it again at the start, but I think what you've asked is whether or not starting as a paralegal as opposed to through a graduate recruitment program does any damage to them as a future lawyer once they do
Exactly.
move forward.
If they've already been admitted to practice as opposed to their, still at uni, finishing uni.
I think that there's enough people in the industry understand that it can be really hard to get that first role as a graduate lawyer. And personally, if someone has been willing to pay their dues, I suppose, as a paralegal, having come through that pathway myself, and I remember when I went and did my PLT, there were a lot of other people who had done the same thing. They were working as paralegals. I would respect that personally. I think that showing your commitment to the profession, that this is what you want to do and you're willing to keep plugging away at it, you've got that resilience and tenacity to keep going, even if you didn't land the graduate lawyer role at the top tier firm. I don't think it would be anything other than well regarded that you've put that effort in.
Yeah, and keep plugging away and looking at other options
That's
at
right.
the same time, rather than just waiting till you get that.
That's right, absolutely.
Yeah.
Shows that you're proactive.
Pathway, I know this question from Mel, but it can be its own pathway as well. So we have a really large alternative legal service practice. We hire like hundreds of legal analysts in that. They are all admitted but not hired as graduates. And if you do that, that is definitely a way into our firm for sure. So that's
a legal analyst.
A legal analyst role.
Yeah.
So it is its own pathway. Like I would definitely consider it.
Okay, all right. No, that's good. Thanks for that. Danielle, while you're there, just tell us about adjacent careers in legal, and maybe just take us through what other things people can do to demonstrate their interest and aptitudes outside of that kind of academic context.
Yeah. Well, I guess I'll just start by saying, like, for a lot of people when they're at uni, you're doing a law degree, you've got your eyes set on what you think you want to do. And I guess to Mel's point, it might even be like you think you want to practice in a specific area for a certain type of law firm. And I guess if you get to the point and that pathway is not looking so realistic, there definitely are pathways in addition to what Amy and Mel have talked about. There are what we're calling new law careers, more and more, where if you're still passionate about the legal ecosystem, but you've started realizing perhaps while you're at uni that actually you got really excited when it came more to, perhaps you were involved in some extracurricular stuff and you were like, actually, I am an excellent project manager. I really excel at this. It really gets me excited. While that is a big part of being a lawyer as well, you could potentially just pursue that and be a legal project manager in a law firm. So I guess, perhaps if you're reaching a point and things aren't quite turning out how you thought, maybe reflect on what it is that you've enjoyed, what you've really liked, and maybe there will be another pathway. And a lot of people can go back to law. Certainly in our team, that does not seem to happen. They seem to join legal operations and legal transformation and like, this is amazing. We love this.
I know. I think it's the best kept secret.
So I won't lie, we don't have many people who go back once. But it is possible. And you get to work with some amazing lawyers, and you just don't have to do the day-to-day legal work essentially in our team, but you're still working in a big law firm. Or for us, but obviously the ecosystem, there's non-for-profits do some really exciting stuff in this space. There's actually a whole group of tech providers just focused on legal, and I know they hire a lot of people with law degrees, often in their customer success team. So, you know, within the broader ecosystem, there are so many jobs that are do not involve you being a practicing lawyer. So, yeah, I do just encourage people, if they're even slightly inclined, don't want to stop people from pursuing their dreams. But if you do get to the end of the law degree and you're like, actually, I'm not sure. And to be honest, we've hired 3 graduates in our legal ops program, and they all did that. They all got to the end of their law degree and thought, actually, I don't want to be a lawyer. But you don't have to have a law degree for our program either. But yeah, and that's okay. And that's not a bad thing. And just take the time to think about it and decide what you want to do, really. But that said, you can do both. Like, you don't have to choose one side or the other. We have a lot of partners who love paralegals who both want to practice law but also are a bit interested in the tech. So I don't want to stop anyone from thinking you can do both. You can do both. But if you're like, no, I've decided I don't want to practice, that is also an option.
Yeah, that's great. There's so many options, aren't there?
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, tech, knowledge, consulting, it's a really broad space.
I'm just looking at the time, so I just thought maybe what I might do now is open up for questions. So I'm just going to jump into the Q&A and see what questions we've already got, and just see if they haven't been answered, we can go through them. If there are gaps in employment or short periods of employment due to various reasons like career responsibilities, would that be perceived as negative? I don't know who wants to answer that one, but yeah, just some gaps in your actual CV. What do you do?
I can certainly speak to that one, because we've seen it in the recruitment process. Generally, what that will lead to is a conversation. We might want to know why, if it's not explained. I would sell those breaks. It doesn't really matter what it was for, if it was to work in a family business, if it was family responsibilities, looking after children, travel. I would just put it in as a reason in your CV why there is that break. Chances are, one way or another, the question will be asked, but it certainly won't reflect badly on you if it's family responsibilities or travel. There's all sorts of reasons why people opt to take a break away from employment, and I would just include it in personally.
Okay, and Amy and Danielle, if you've got anything further to add, just please feel free. Otherwise, I've got another question. Do you think there is an unconscious bias towards students who have attended the top universities?
For me, no. I don't even really think about it. I don't hear it every day justice. We've got people who've even done their law degrees through remote universities. So long as they've got the eagerness and the ability to learn, that's what we need. But I know that at bigger firms, absolutely, I'm sure that there still is a bit of favoritism towards certain universities. But I think if you go into your application knowing that might be something that might be considered, you don't obviously need to say, well, I think you're not going to like my application because I didn't go to these unis. But if you say, look, I went to this university and I gave it my all, and this is what I achieved. These are the extracurricular things I did at the same time. These are the volunteer roles I took on. Then I think back it up with further reasons why you're a suitable candidate.
I will just add to that, we do, as someone from a bigger firm, we actively try to promote social mobility. So they actually are actively trying to make sure we do not prioritize certain universities.
Yeah, that's really, really good, because I think sometimes students can get really caught up and a bit obsessed with that as well, but it's almost like, don't let it become something like a monkey that sits on your shoulder. I think you kind of just need to try and just flick your mindset and not focus on that, because if it is there, there's nothing you can do about it. Yeah. A question around how do you assess candidates with disabilities? Anyone want to take that question?
Well, I mean, our internship program, we can make it as flexible and remote as possible, with the hope that you know, someone with a disability would be able to participate if someone's comfortable giving us some information about the what's the word I'm looking for? The accessibility support services we can provide, then that'd be really useful, and we can go to HR and work around it. I mean, I myself wear hearing aids in both ears, and it's been a bit of a I make a bit of a joke about it within the office, because if I'm not wearing them and someone tries to talk to me, they're like, have you got your hearing aids in, Amy? And you know, my attitude has always been, I'm just open about that with people, because if I can't hear someone, I don't want them to think that I just don't understand what they're saying. Like, there's a legit reason. But I would love to be able to support anyone. Disability or no disability.
And this is something that I've got colleagues at council who have disabilities, and we even have members of our elected council who have disabilities. And as an employer, we're very open to making this a safe and accessible workplace for everyone. I think everyone is valued here, and the skills that candidates bring to the table, that's what we're interested in, the cultural fit, whether or not they're going to be able to fit in with the rest of the organisation. Any other accessibility requirements or anything like that can be addressed. It's certainly not something that would in any way influence our decision at all. Very happy to have discussions around that, and we have many colleagues here at council that have mobility issues or a range of accessibility requirements that are met by the council.
Okay, thanks, Mel. We've still got quite a few more questions, so I'll just keep going with those. There's a question for Danielle here. Someone said, great to see you a second time, in addition to when you were on the New Law Careers panel last month. The question is around how you value the job candidate would have, or eager to develop the commercial and innovative mindset. Do you think if one candidate remains in one position for an extended period of time, i.e. a lack of industry diversity, but shows loyalty, would it position that candidate in a disadvantaged way?
No, I mean, I don't think, I guess, I hope I've made this clear already. I think you can have been in one job for a long time, but as long as through that job you've started demonstrating interest in this space, that's great. You certainly don't need to have hopped around. If you have hopped around while you're trying to figure out what you like, that's also not a negative. So I hope I've made that clear already so far. But yeah, no one way or the other. We don't look at it favorably or not.
Okay, all right, thank you. I'm currently a legal assistant in criminal law, but I'd like to move toward in-house or a corporate position. How can I best signal this on my resume and cover letter?
Well, being an in-house lawyer myself, as I said, particularly for government roles, if you can address the selection criteria, that's a really great way of getting your foot in the door where your skills might not necessarily be so obvious, that you do have you are able to meet those selection criteria. If it doesn't stand out from your resume, then I would just specifically address the selection criteria and put in information about where you might have shown your capabilities in other areas. It could be volunteer work, it could be further study. There could be a number of ways where you could show that you meet the criteria, even if it's not from your direct employment. So I think that that would be a good place to start.
Okay, thanks, Mel. How can we show that transferable skills in a past corporate environment is valuable in law? So yeah, transferable skills again. So that might be like a good one. Even I'm thinking, Amy, for you, someone that has worked in corporate, for example, and maybe they're wanting to bring it into a new area.
Yep.
Yeah.
Or even things like retail. I mean, a lot of our job is communicating directly with clients. So our interns are on the phones a lot of the day, getting instructions from clients, trying to make sense of, you know, the client might not even understand what their legal issue really is. And so it's teasing that out. It's dealing with all sorts of vulnerable people. It's working with a team of many interns. So they're all skills that I think that you often learn, probably more so in other roles where you're faced with the general public or you know, corporate roles. So I'd be upfront about that in a cover letter and say, you know, I may not have had an opportunity to work at many, if any, law firms, but I've developed this skill while working in this role. I've applied it, and maybe give an example of how you've applied it and why you think it would be useful to the firm to have someone with those skills.
Okay, thank you. There's just a question here about what sorts of opportunities are available that first years can consider. So I'm wondering if they mean first years as is like a university student. I'm kind of thinking if that is the case, then, I mean, I'm kind of thinking that probably volunteering work, also like just getting involved in kind of some of the extracurricular activities that a university offers, and also just internal opportunities maybe through the law faculty as well. They sometimes have a placements officer that can also assist with placements in a particular university. They might have some kind of allegiances.
Yeah, and get on wait lists at community legal centres.
Yeah.
I had to, it's funny, they can be really, really hard to get into, but I remember in my second semester in first year, I called a bunch of my local community legal centres, and it might have taken 12 months to get to the top of the list, but having your name down in first year is a good place to start.
Yeah. One or two final questions. Is having done your honours or like a Masters of Law considered an advantage?
I'll just quickly answer, then the people with the law degrees can say, I don't think it really is from what I can see at HSF, but there are also some comments about ageism. I do think though, if you have a background, like I said, if you've had another career, particularly for us, like in the tech space, because emerging technology is such a focus, not just for the way we work, but actually in terms of law, I find those mature graduates or those actually do incredibly well at our firm. So I'll let Amy and Mel comment, but I actually don't think it works against you at all.
My response is that it's kind of like the transcripts. We'd be more interested in how you're going to fit into the team and what you might bring to the role in terms of support. Study is always good and it's never wasted, but particularly with local government, when it is such a specialised field and there isn't really an awful lot available to study at that level, it's not something that would particularly be influential in our decision.
Okay. So
Yeah, and I think it depends on the practice area as well. Like none of ours would need that extra year or two of study. You know, I always had the attitude that I wanted to get straight into practicing and learn. And then 10 years on, that's when I decided to do my master's, when I really knew of an area I wanted to delve deeper into. I mean, there's no harm in continuing to study, but I guess the more you do the more extra years you do before you practice, people might start wondering whether you're more interested in academics rather than practice. I think it could go either way.
Okay. A question around how mature candidates are perceived in the recruitment space.
Like I said, I think they're perceived really well at our firm, particularly if you've got relevant experience. Like I said, our clients work in different, our clients are not law firms themselves. So if you've got anything relevant to what our clients do, in fact, I often see mature lawyers go through partnership track quicker than others, personally, from what I've seen.
Okay, that's great. And I'm going to just have one last question here. Law firms, particular in hiring overseas lawyers as compared to junior lawyers fresh out of university and PLT. So how do you view hiring overseas lawyers?
We've had some overseas lawyers as interns who've needed to do their PLT to requalify here, and they've been wonderful because they've got the experience of working in a different country on top of their general life experience and general professional experience. It's been wonderful, and they've gone on to get great jobs afterwards.
Okay, thank you. All right, well, I think we'll finish up there. So a huge thank you to Amy, Danielle and Mel for sharing your time and your insights and experience with us all. I've no doubt that participants today will take away a lot of sage advice and some really kind of good practical tips as well. Don't forget to connect with us and make sure that you're aware of upcoming events and programs at the college. So we've got the Practice Academy series that's going to kick off in August. So that will be advertised on the events page. We've also got a number of articles and posts nationally that are shared with the profession on LinkedIn and also on the events and resources page on the College of Law website. So yeah, please just make sure that you connect with us as well. So thank you very much for your time today, and thank you so much to our wonderful panelists, and I look forward to crossing paths with you next time. Thanks everyone.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye.